The attic smelled of dust and forgotten years. Sunlight pierced through the cracks in the wooden roof, cutting across boxes filled with yellowed papers, rusted tools, and keepsakes long abandoned. Clara Bennett pushed her hair out of her face, brushing cobwebs from her shoulder as she pulled open an old cedar chest. Inside, wrapped in brittle tissue paper, was a bundle of photographs. Most were faded family portraits, stiff men with pocket watches, stern women in high collars, children who looked more like miniature adults than kids. But one picture stopped Clara cold. It was a woman in a dark dress, her hair pinned neatly, her eyes wide and haunting. Her lips curved upward into what was supposed to be a smile, but something about it was deeply unsettling. It looked practiced, hollow, like a mask barely holding together. At the bottom corner, written in elegant ink, was the date, 1885. Clara couldn't take her eyes off the woman. There was something in that expression, something almost pleading. Unlike the other stiff photos, this one carried emotion, yet it was the wrong kind. She placed it aside, trying to focus on the task at hand. Her grandmother had passed away 2 months ago, and the family was clearing the farmhouse that had stood for 4 generations. But as Clara folded blankets and stacked books, her eyes kept drifting back to the photograph. It wasn't just a picture, it felt alive, as if the woman were staring through time, her fake smile begging someone, anyone, to notice the truth behind it. Clara whispered under her breath, "Who were you?" Her curiosity got the better of her. Carefully, she flipped the photograph over, afraid the fragile paper might crumble. On the back, faint but still legible, was a handwritten note. Eliza, 1885. Smile for them, even when it hurts. Clara's heart sank. The words carried a weight she couldn't explain. Who was Eliza? And what hurt so much that even her smile was a performance? She traced the writing with her fingertip, feeling as though the message was meant for her, across centuries. Later that evening, Clara sat with her father at the kitchen table, the photo in hand. "Dad, do you know who this is?" He squinted at it, pushing his glasses higher on his nose. "That's your great-great-aunt Eliza." "I think she was my grandmother's sister." "What happened to her?" Clara asked. He shrugged. "Died young, that's all I know." Folks didn't talk much about her, just one of those family stories that got lost. But Clara wasn't satisfied. Something about Eliza's eyes, those haunted eyes, demanded answers. The next day, Clara went to the town library. The archives room smelled of old paper and ink. She sifted through newspaper reels until she found the year 1885. There it was, an article announcing Eliza's marriage. Prominent family's daughter marries industrialist Henry Whitmore, a union of prosperity and promise. The article described Eliza as a radiant bride with a smile that lit up the ceremony. Clara frowned. Radiant? Lit up? The photograph told a very different story. The newspaper's cheerfulness felt like a lie, a glossy cover hiding a darker truth. Clara read every line, her fingers trembling slightly. It spoke of Henry Whitmore's wealth, his factories, his influence in the city. Eliza's name appeared only as the bride. No mention of her interests, her thoughts, her dreams. Only her value as someone's wife. The more Clara read, the more she understood that the smile in the photograph wasn't happiness. It was surrender. As she flipped through more newspapers, an elderly librarian approached. "Looking into the Whitmores, dear?" Clara hesitated, then held up the photo. "Do you know anything about her, Eliza Bennett?" The woman's eyes softened with recognition. Ah, Eliza. Poor child. People whispered about her. She didn't want that marriage, but back then... She shook her head. Women had little choice. Families cared more for money and alliances than love. Clara swallowed hard. The librarian lowered her voice. "They say she never truly smiled again after that wedding." That night, Clara sat on her bed, staring at the photograph propped against her lamp. She thought about her own life. How many times had she forced a smile at work, even though her boss dismissed her ideas? How many times had she smiled at her boyfriend, even when deep down she felt their relationship was suffocating her? Eliza's fake smile from 1885 wasn't just history, it was a mirror. Clara realized she too was living with smiles that weren't real. A week later, while sorting through another trunk in the attic, Clara's hand brushed against a small object wedged in the corner. She pulled it out, a leather-bound book, worn but intact. On the front were the initials E.B. Her pulse quickened. Eliza Bennett. Clara opened it carefully, the spine creaking like it hadn't been touched in over a century. Inside, in neat cursive, was a first entry dated March 2nd, 1885. Tomorrow I marry Henry. Father says it is best. Mother says a good wife smiles no matter what, but my heart belongs elsewhere. Clara gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. This wasn't just a photograph anymore. It was a voice, Eliza's voice, reaching out through time. Clara read on, her eyes devouring every word. I love Samuel. He teaches at the schoolhouse. He is kind, he listens, and when he smiles, I feel alive. But he is poor, and my family says love does not feed the table. They say Henry can give me everything. Everything but freedom. Tears welled in Clara's eyes. Eliza hadn't just been a figure in a photograph. She had been a woman torn apart by duty and love. The diary ended with a chilling line. Tomorrow I will smile, but it will not be real. Look closely, and you will see the truth. Clara pressed the diary against her chest, as though hugging Eliza through the pages. She knew then she couldn't leave this story buried. Clara turned the fragile pages, each one a window into Eliza's soul. The entries spoke of stolen glances, hurried conversations by the schoolhouse gate, and letters slipped into books when no one was watching. Samuel Carter, the schoolteacher. Eliza wrote of how his voice soothed her when she was anxious, how his hands were calloused from chalk and work, not wealth, and how his dreams were simple but pure. They wanted to build a life together, small but free. But the Bennett family, wealthy landowners, considered Samuel beneath them. Her father dismissed him as a man with nothing. If love is nothing, Eliza scrawled in anger, then let me have nothing. I would rather starve with Samuel than feast with Henry. Clara's hands trembled. Eliza's words didn't just belong to the past, they echoed into the present. Then came the entry Clara dreaded. They told me to smile today, to show the world I was happy. They said a bride must look radiant, for appearances are everything. But I felt like a painting hung on a wall, my soul locked away behind the canvas. I smiled, yes, but it was not real. My lips bent upward, but inside I wept. Perhaps the camera captured my defeat. Perhaps one day someone will look closely and see what no one else saw. Asterisk. Clara set the diary down beside the photograph. The connection was undeniable. That haunting smile in the picture wasn't just for show, it was a mask worn to hide heartbreak. The photo wasn't just a piece of family history, it was a silent cry for help, frozen in time. For days afterward, Clara carried Eliza's diary in her bag. She read it during lunch breaks, late at night, even while waiting at traffic lights. But what struck her most wasn't just Eliza's pain. It was how familiar it felt. How many times had Clara herself forced a smile during family gatherings to hide her exhaustion? How many times had she said, "I'm fine," when she wasn't? How many times had she chosen silence over honesty, just to keep the peace? Eliza's ghostly smile wasn't just about the 1880s. It was about now. About every woman, every man, every person who ever felt trapped by expectation. Clara whispered to herself, "This isn't just her story, it's ours." Clara turned another page, expecting sorrow, but instead, she found fire. I will not let Henry take everything from me. He can have my hand, but not my mind. He can cage my body, but my thoughts are my own. I hide books beneath the floorboard. I still write to Samuel, though I may never send the letters. When I smile at the dinner table, it is not joy, it is defiance. They will never know that behind every forced grin, I am still mine. Asterisk. Clara's chest tightened with pride. Eliza wasn't weak. She was strong. Strong in the only ways she could be in her time. Her false smile wasn't only despair, it was resistance. The later pages grew fragmented. The handwriting wavered. The words rushed. I feel weaker each day. They say it is my nerves, but I know it is my spirit breaking. I dream of Samuel's face, and in my dreams, I am free. If anyone finds this diary, know that I loved him with everything I had, even if the world never allowed us to be. My body may be trapped here, but my soul belongs to him, and to the truth. Asterisk. It was the last entry. Clara searched historical records and learned Eliza had died just months after her marriage. The cause was listed as illness, but the whispers said otherwise, that grief had consumed her, that her smile had finally faded for good. Clara closed the diary and stared at her reflection in the window. She saw her own forced smiles, at meetings, at dinners, and photographs on social media. She thought about her boyfriend, Ryan, whose voice often cut her down, leaving her to pretend everything was fine. She thought about the office job that drained her, where she smiled to avoid conflict, smiled to hide her exhaustion, smiled until her cheeks hurt. The realization was sharp. She was living Eliza's life, just in modern form. Eliza's story wasn't just history, it was a warning, and Clara couldn't ignore it anymore. Clara stayed up late one night, typing furiously. She wrote an article for a local history blog, pairing the photograph with passages from Eliza's diary. She titled it, "She Smiled in 1885, but It Wasn't Real. Look Closely." The post spread quickly. Comments flooded in. "I've smiled through an abusive marriage. This story broke me. I see myself in Eliza. Thank you for telling her story. This isn't just history, it's happening every day." Eliza's haunting smile resonated with thousands of strangers who admitted they too wore masks for the world. When Clara's relatives saw the article, some were upset. "Why drag up old sadness?" her uncle said. "What good does it do?" But others saw the truth. Her aunt confessed quietly, "I forced a smile for years in my marriage too. Maybe it's time we stop pretending." The family gathered one evening, photo and diary on the table. For the first time, they spoke openly about choices, about sacrifices, about how many women in their lineage had smiled when it hurt. Eliza, silenced in her own time, had finally found her voice through Clara. Weeks passed, and Clara felt lighter. She ended her relationship with Ryan, realizing she had been shrinking herself to make him comfortable. She applied for a creative job she truly wanted instead of staying at the one that drained her. One morning, Clara stood before her bathroom mirror. She smiled at her reflection, and for the first time in years, it wasn't forced. It wasn't for anyone else. It was real. She whispered, "This one's for you, Eliza." Clara carefully placed the photograph and the diary in a glass frame, adding a new inscription beneath. "She smiled in 1885, but it wasn't real. Look closely, and you'll see her courage." She hung it on her wall, where visitors would always notice it. And when they asked about the woman in the picture, Clara told the story, not just of heartbreak, but of quiet bravery and the importance of living truthfully. Eliza's unreal smile became more than a family mystery. It became a movement, whispered across generations. Don't smile for them, smile for yourself. And in that moment, across the veil of time, Clara imagined Eliza finally smiling, truly smiling at last.